And we are live on today's show with Marina Segal from Checkpoint Software Technologies. We will learn how we can secure our cloud environments during uncertain times, why DevOps support is important, and how to ensure you have the right security foundation. But first, a short message from today's show sponsor, Checkpoint. Hello, hi, it's Nancy here from the OWASP DevSlop show, where we meet practitioners from the industry who join us to teach us something new. If you are here, you're new here, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, enable notifications, and note that all the important information that we'll discuss today will be added to the description box below. So let's jump right in. Our guest today is Head of Product Management Cloud at Checkpoint Software Technologies, Marina Segal. Marina is focused on delivering cloud security and compliance products and has over 14 years of global experience in security, compliance, and governance with Deloitte and other high-tech companies. She also founded Security Diva, a group that promotes women in security and technology. But again, before we meet Marina, let me introduce you to my co-hosts for today, Nicole Becker and Tanya Jenka, also known as She Hacks Purple. Hi, Tanya.
Hi,
Nicole.
Hi, guys.
Isn't Nikki also known as the Dead Robots?
The Dead Robots.
Yeah, but I'm not nearly as popular on Twitter as you are, Tanya. Yeah. I'm like, I got to work on that.
I'm not sure if that helps anything, but yeah.
But you're so connected to your screen name, and I feel like every 6 years I change mine.
Yeah. And I feel like people call you, refer to you as She Hacks Purple. Nobody refers to Nicole as the Dead Robots. I hope not, actually.
I guess it's kind of tragic. Yeah, it's a little tragic.
Yes. So I think we can just go and start and meet our guest for today. Mm-hmm. Let's meet Marina. Hi, Marina.
Hey, hi, everybody. Hi. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Let me put you on a screen right here. So, cloud security posture management. Is that what we're talking about today?
We are. Probably, as all of you know, healthy posture is important for everybody, and especially for cloud environments, not only for humans. And I thought maybe to talk a little bit about the evolution that is happening. And when I thought about evolution, I didn't want to bring all of those boring kind of Darwin evolution pictures. So I took inspiration from my kids, and I took this picture of Pokemon evolution.
I'm not even cool. Your slides yet. Let me add them to the screen. Just a second.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. I just wanted to kind of bring something fun this afternoon on Sunday. Can you see the slide now?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Awesome. So when we were thinking about evolution, it's something that it starts with something cute, something that we want to start doing, and we want to become stronger at it. And when I thought about the posture management, I think companies are maturing this part of the security in the cloud environments. And I thought it would be nice to discuss the steps that companies take to get to a mature level of posture management and security of the cloud environments. So I will go and kind of talk a little bit about where it all started and how workloads and environments are changing, and then I will connect that a little bit to the evolution I wanted to discuss. So basically, as companies moving from the data centers to the cloud environments, The applications are starting to be everywhere. They're starting, companies have applications in the on-prem world and in the cloud, in hybrid environments. And what happens is that a lot of companies are moving from the traditional data centers, from centrally managed branch offices, from monolith applications, from on-premise applications. We are trying to kind of figure out how to do it throughout different phases. And the company can be in the data center and in the cloud at the same time, and they need to secure all of it. So basically, moving to the public cloud, to the hybrid cloud, to remote offices, connecting all the clouds and directly to the cloud environment, especially these days as all of us are mostly working remotely. Companies also are changing the way they create applications. They are moving from just very simple VMs or servers into more complicated architectures using containers, serverless, and sometimes mixture of all of them together. And that way we are creating SaaS applications these days. And all of this happens much faster now. We are moving from slow release cycles to development at a DevOps speed. And the challenge for all the security professionals is to understand what's in there. The visibility part is very challenging because in order to protect something, you need to know what you have. The governance and the definition of what is right and what is wrong is also very challenging, as well as the establishment of prevention mechanisms and ability to do it at scale across all the clouds, all the networks, all the workload types that constantly changing. So we're going to talk today about how to address these challenges. So security hasn't changed really, but the world we need to secure is changing. And if we are looking at the pillars of how to secure the cloud, there are 4 pillars still that are very important, and they are foundational pieces of cloud security. Network security and prevention of threat prevention. Security posture management, that's the part which we will be focusing on today, that in my opinion is really a foundational and is becoming a commodity, and that's why I want to talk about the maturity of it. Application security and threat hunting and intelligence. And all of this needs to happen at the speed of the DevOps. So why is it complicated? Let's think about how the cloud environments are changing. So I was looking at trying to get some numbers around what does it mean that the cloud providers or cloud environments are very dynamic and changing a lot. And I found a screenshot of all of the Amazon AWS services back in 2014, and there were less than 30 services. Today, it's more than 140. I think this number is even a little bit outdated because I put this slide a few months back. So those services gets added every day, and each one of them have different versions, and all of this magic needs to be protected, and we need to make sure that it's being configured properly, because our developers are moving fast. They want to play with each one of those cool, innovative solutions that cloud providers give them, and we as a security professionals need to be able to protect all of them. And basically, it creates a lot of chaos. It creates a lot of misunderstanding of how it needs to be configured, and visibility is very problematic in these types of environments that are built like a Lego and needs to be protected at all times. So basically, the posture management is a moving target, and we need to be able to create solutions and security around this moving target, because developers running fast, cloud providers keep changing and innovating, and their velocity is very high. The types of workloads are changing. We started in the past to use with usage of VMs and servers, and now we are most of us are moving towards containerized architectures and serverless. And as we saw, lack of visibility is not helping here. So what I thought would be interesting is to talk a little bit about maturity and the CSPM. So basically, CSPM is the acronym for Cloud Security Posture Management. And this is the foundational piece of making sure that cloud services are being configured properly, that your buckets are not being misconfigured, that we are creating services with the right security mechanisms in place. So there are 5 steps in maturing the posture management for a company. I've seen a lot of companies who start small and then they build on top of the foundation they established. And it doesn't mean that each one of us needs to be in the last stage of this maturity. Let me just show what I mean. I can use this quick screenshot. So basically, we want companies to progress from the ad hoc state of the CSPM into the optimized. And each one of the companies has their own pace, and the implementation and the progression would be different. But the idea is to understand where you are at right now and build a plan in order to get better, in order to mature your posture management and make sure that you know what's your goals and you know where you want to be. So I will be discussing each one of those steps and providing you with some examples from what I've seen in the industry, based on my understanding of companies who are moving to the cloud, companies who are already in the clouds, and environments that are supposed to be very secured and are very, for which it is very important to protect and make sure that they are not being misconfigured. So let's start with the first maturity step, which is ad hoc. So in the ad hoc stage, companies start with very unorganized approach to posture management. They start with understanding that it may be important to make sure that they have some practices around configurations and securing their cloud environments. They may not have security involved at all in the development lifecycle. Obviously, there is no automation because there is nothing to automate yet. And they don't have any way to prioritize what needs to be done first. As part of this kind of a chaotic and ad hoc approach, they also are not measuring themselves. So what I've seen at this stage is that companies, they do try to protect what they know is important, but they are not really putting an effort to make it as a standard. They just try kind of using their instincts and enabling whatever configurations they think it makes sense to enable. For example, just brought a screenshot of what types of configurations kind of obvious that companies would need to implement, and they probably are starting with MFA devices for root users, making sure that their virtual machines or blob storage on Azure, is not public. But that is basically as far as it goes. So for each service they use in the cloud environments, they would just decide during the implementation or during the deployment what type of security they will choose, and they don't have any policies, any process. Security is not doing any assessment on those devices. DevOps people are not involved, and obviously there is no automation. So does it make sense? You're getting really quiet there.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So this is like the bare minimum of like things you do in the cloud before you roll out something to production. It's like this
they kind of just decide based on their instincts. If they feel like making this blob private, they would do that. But they obviously are not going to check for guidance anywhere. They kind of use their own instincts when they're doing that, and any developer would just decide on his own.
Yeah, or driven by the news cycle, right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, big breach. All right, let's go look for this one thing, and then we're
yeah.
good.
Or maybe I heard some news yesterday, and then it makes me feel like doing that. So basically, very initial phase of they kind of figuring out that there is something in there, but they are not calling it names. They don't have any process. They kind of moving in a just going with the flow, basically.
I had a question about the maturity model.
Yeah.
Is it owned by anybody? Like, is it a CSA product?
No, so I just invented it basically last week because I was thinking about, how would I take that to my clients? And I'm actually going to go to CSA and CIS and talk to them about it, because I do feel that it's time for us in the industry to kind of take this maturity model and make it more formal to help companies to progress and mature their posture management practices.
Yeah, it could definitely be. Like, it looks like Sam from OWASP and
yeah. So that is my kind of intention to affect the industry and help companies to do better. I haven't taken it yet to any organizations that can establish it as a standard, but definitely that's my next goal.
CSA will want it.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's say that, the companies, after being there in this ad hoc stage, they've been there for a while, but now they are growing, they have more stuff in the cloud environment, they understand that they have some compliance or regulatory requirements, and they want to move forward. They kind of understand that they need to develop that. And that moved them to this next stage. I'm calling it developing stage, which is kind of they are starting to establish those policies or practices, but it's siloed. It may be something that one team is doing on Azure with a certain kind of lens or framework, another team may be doing nothing, and then there might be some audit which pushes them to implement some of the controls, but it's really siloed, and they are very tactical in the implementation. They just are doing whatever needs to be done to get through it, and that's it.
In your experience, is this like I guess I'm just trying to, would this be like someone who's new at the cloud, or would this be is this just a culture in the organization? I mean, it's a hard question to answer.
It depends. I think, obviously, big enterprise companies that have been in the cloud for a while and needed to go through few years of, compliance assessments, they probably would be much further in the maturity, because, your governance and regulatory regimes kind of guide you to optimize and make yourself more efficient. But I've seen companies of a pretty big size that already in the cloud that are still doing this developing stage just because their development is siloed, or because their security team is not really involved in all of the activities of the dev teams. But as more, the bigger the companies and the more regulatory requirements they have, obviously they will be in the more advanced stages.
I have a question too. So a lot of clients, because I do some consulting, but they always seem to think that they're not moving to the cloud fast enough. How long does it usually take for a big enterprise to move to the cloud? Because they all seem disappointed in themselves when it doesn't take 3 to 6 months.
Well, I've seen pretty big companies who had very aggressive timelines, but those projects would not end up within a year for large enterprise companies with a lot of stuff they want to move. I've seen a startup at the very late stages, a fintech company who moved to the cloud within 8 months, and that was very aggressive. They pretty much moved all of their development to the cloud. They left just the very sensitive stuff in the on-prem, and then the rest was done on the cloud environment. So I think 6 months is the minimum I've seen. I haven't seen any company doing it faster than 6 months.
What would you say that the average time is? Because like 6 months sounds so fast to me too.
It's fast for it's fast. And I think it's a project of between 6 to 2 years, 6 months to 2 years, depending on the size of the company, and it never ends. You're gonna need to, define what's moving to the cloud, and a lot of those big enterprises are still living with hybrid environments, and they leave stuff in the on-prem world and run stuff in the cloud, and moving. Think about moving monolith application for bank from on-prem to the cloud. It seems
painful,
and it's just so crazy because no one remembers what was developed in this monolith applications, and you need to pretty much write it from scratch. So and for a big bank that is spread around the globe, you probably need to go through a lot in order to do it. It
feels like it depends with what you start with, right? Like if you have a lot of legacy application, if you've been around for a long time, like it's easy for a startup who starts with nothing to go and start with the cloud, and that's where they are. There's no actual migration, right? But if you've been around for a long time, you don't even have proper asset management for what's is on premise.
Yeah, or things aren't even in source code repositories. There's that. And it's funny, but it's true in a lot of our
sad.
One of my clients,
but it is true.
One of my clients who was moving the HR monolith application to the cloud, we asked about, the brain of the HR calculations for the payroll was done on the monolith. And I asked them, do you have any kind of a PRD or document that describes what's the logic? And they brought me literally like a bunch of papers where they printed all of it, and they had nothing on, in terms of documentation in the application itself. So you're gonna need to read a lot of documents to be able to do it in that environment, right? And sometimes it's easier just to write it from scratch.
If they want to, right?
And then how much it will cost.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically the developing stage, right? So we have the siloed and tactical approach. Some teams are doing something, some teams doing nothing yet. Security is starting to be involved, mostly because of the regulations and because of the sensitive data that is involved in the cloud migrations. But they usually are getting involved post-deployment after the fact. There is little or no automation. There might be some tooling that is involved, but probably minimal. A lot of priorities are due to escalations or due to fires that are happening, or due to something that needs to be fixed for the audit or for the regulatory review. And it's really hard to measure a mess like that. So just few examples I took from AWS or Azure. It might be that some of the teams would start using tools like Security Center, to evaluate the same settings that we saw in the previous slide, where developers would put it just by themselves. They would really start using some monitoring tooling. Maybe open source. This is an example from one of the open source tools in terms of how we evaluate whether the VMs are public or not. But basically, it's done still only for a subset of things, a subset of services or cloud environments that companies use. And companies at this stage, companies do start asking questions such as, where do I start? So there are, several options here, and I've seen different flavors of all of them together or just some of them. So it can start with homegrown solutions where, companies just using native APIs. You can fetch all of this information about public VMs, public buckets, public stuff that you are exposing to the internet, security settings. You can start by just writing your scripts and using native APIs to validate that, to create some level of automation and make it a little bit more organized. Some of the companies would go to the open source, and I just brought few open source tools here that I'm familiar with, but there are a bunch of them in the if you search. Cloud Custodian, Netflix has their own tool. Security Center actually has a very good community. Tanya probably knows a lot about it. There are tools for Kubernetes posture management as well. Falco is one of them. And basically, each one of those tools can give you a good quick start to understand what you need to evaluate, what are those questions that relate to security of different services in the cloud environment that are important when you evaluate the security. There are also a bunch of native tools that can help with security and posture management. They are really giving you a good set of metrics and good set of controls and monitoring reports and alerts to evaluate your infrastructure. Some of them also have good mechanism for prevention if you want to go to a more advanced stages, and we will talk about them in the next few slides. So Security Hub on AWS, Security Center and Sentinel for Azure, GCP Command Center for the GCP, and also they have a lot of stuff for Kubernetes in here.
Marina, I'm seeing a lot of tools popping up about, monitoring your environment, your cloud environment. I do find that native tools like Security Hub and AWS seem to be doing a good job. What's the opportunity that these tools, or what's the gap that they're filling in? Is Security Hub not enough for AWS and Azure Security Center for Azure and GCP Command Center? What is the gap between those tools and what they offer natively? Because I often see the same description, even like, oh, we cover the CIS, controls, and so they keep saying the same thing. I'm like, why do we need 50 tools to do the same thing? Especially if it comes with the product. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And as you know, I'm on the vendor side of a third-party vendors, and I've been asked the same question a lot. So basically, what happens is that if you are using multiple cloud environments, you kind of need to learn the jargon of those different types of. You need to know what is the difference of each cloud in technology, like. For example, S3 on AWS is a blob for Azure. The screens would look different, the APIs are different, but they are basically providing you the same capability. Now, if you need to secure them and you go to Security Hub and Security Center, you have two more tools that you need to manage in order to secure the same capability on two different cloud providers. So it becomes a little bit more complicated for people to learn all of those technologies and learn how do you secure those with all those different security tools, right? So there is a need of, security teams to become more efficient and measure a security of the different services through a single tool set that gives you the same UI or same kind of terminology, and being able to compare, where am I doing better? Am I better on AWS or on Azure? Because if you have a score of 55 on AWS in Security Hub and 87 in Security Center on Azure, are we comparing apples to apples, right? Another thing why there are so many tools is that because customers still want some segregation of duties between the cloud provider and the security of cloud provider, because you don't want the cloud provider to give you a scoring or to measure itself in terms of the security. You still want some independent assessment you're running on top of it. And sometimes it's even part of your regulatory requirements, because a lot of them require segregation of duties between the security and the infrastructure. The other thing is cost. If you are running guard duty, or you are running config rules or security center, there is a cost associated with that, and security teams trying to optimize for cost. So if they can live with a homegrown solution or an open source or maybe cheaper third-party vendor, which gives them multi-cloud and this segregation of duties, that may be something that they will select.
I feel also that like the cloud providers trying to be perfect at every single different aspect of security just isn't going to happen. Like, for instance, so I'm seeing a lot of cool startups come up doing like least privilege.
Yeah.
Which is
sorry, something was written here.
Okay, I was like, oh gosh, is that me? So for instance, like that's what RepoKit does, but now I'm seeing products coming out that are taking it like to the next level. And when you look at the permissions that are in AWS, like it's like 200 different permissions that you have to give because you want to share a file, which is completely different than in Azure. And so like just being able to manage that, it's like such a mess. And so like, I don't understand why AWS isn't offering that, but maybe like they don't see it as a huge value, and probably you know what they'll do? They'll just buy the company that makes the best one.
Yeah, and I think that, for cloud provider, their goal is to give us the basic tool set in order for us to do it. And since they're not a security vendors, they would only take that to a certain level that gives you the basics, and then all of the third-party tools and the open source tool sets are optimizing, making it more efficient, adding the flavor of security intelligence or research on top of it, and helping you to optimize, right?
But I think too that. Oh, sorry, Nancy.
Go ahead. Well, I just felt like there's also a cost to adopting different tools, right? Like of training your people. And I know what I've seen in my environment is, if the vendor can give it to us and we don't have to train our people to another tool, they'd rather have that. If AWS has it and we're dealing with AWS, let's buy it from them. And so I feel like the opportunity is there. And sometimes they also have the tool, like even for IAM, they have the I think IAM analyzer or something like that. And but there's still other open source products or even vendors that are offering these tools. So sometimes I'm wondering, is there a gap that AWS is not covering and that those security companies are seeing?
I think some of it is context, right? Like those cloud vendors, they don't have context as to what you're building in their cloud, right? Like you could be building, a super regulated financial services application, or you could be building like a blogging site, right? They have no context there. So I think sometimes those tools that are just like, public S3 bucket versus not public, like, cool, it's good to know all the public ones, but there might be a really good reason why I need that public one because of my business, right? And like, that's not a bad thing. It's a thing that if you just understood the context is totally exactly what we want. And I think that layer of context is totally missing in a lot of the cloud providers. And that's where the security space kind of comes in to like give us that. I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's more to take those basic capabilities and customizing it. A lot of stuff that needs to be customized to the environment of a client is really hard to implement on the native solution just because they need to serve so many clients and they are not providing enough ways for simple customization. So as an example, on if you want to add a new config rule, you need to basically write a Python script and run it as your Lambda function. Not a lot of security professionals that are doing CSPM would know how to write Python script. With those third-party tools, you would be able to do it with a simple few buttons clicks across Security Hub for AWS, Azure, and GCP without knowing any coding languages. So it basically simplifies the journey for you. So I think there is a room for everyone, and there are different needs, and that's why this maturity model helps us to understand where are we today, where we want to be, and now let's think about the tool that helps us to achieve that. It can be an open source, it can be a native tool, it can be a third-party provider, but at least we would have the criteria for selection that make it easier for us to decide. So I will be moving on to the next stage. I call it reactive, meaning that we do have some better understanding of the posture management needs. We do have unified approach to it. We start thinking about auto-remediation cycles. For example, if we know that a certain region needs to be closed, we would be able to start auto remediation activities for that area of my environment. Security is starting to be involved more, maybe even in pre-deployment phases, but it's manual. Prioritization happens, but still it's manual and is not optimized. And we are starting to measure our KPIs, basically creating some dashboards for management to understand how we are doing, what's the score, is it getting better? So in order to start with unified approach to CSPM, we need to know which framework we want to start with. There are so many frameworks. Some companies would choose frameworks based on their compliance requirements. Some companies would stick to more security-related best practices. And when I was kind of helping companies to select framework, in the end, they all talk about the same requirements. And if you are doing CIS benchmarks, most likely you already have 80% of controls for the PCI and most of the controls for FedRAMP, and it's just a matter of mapping that. So my kind of advice here is to start with the most prescriptive framework. And by prescriptive, I mean that it clearly defines what is that requirement. So for example, if CIS talks about password, it would exactly tell you how to enable the password and what length it needs to be. While if we are looking at the descriptive one, and GDPR is one of the most descriptive frameworks or laws, it would just say you need to have those authentication mechanisms. So if you have already passwords in place, most likely you are already doing this high-level descriptive measures that laws and regulatory framework that are less prescriptive requires you to do. So starting with prescriptive and mapping it back to all the rest would help you with 80%, and then you just customize the 20%. Now, when it comes to customization, so there are a lot of different types of services on AWS, on Azure, on GCP, Kubernetes, if you're using Terraforms, and you need to be able to kind of add your specific requirements to each one of those frameworks that you've selected. So basically, you would have a master mapping of all of the controls, and then you would just add a custom subset of checks that you need in order to customize it to your own needs. So for example, if the CIS benchmarks talks about most common services such as S3 buckets, security groups in AWS, or blobs on Azure, or VMs on GCP, it probably is not talking about anything that relates to analytics. So you pretty much would need to add your own set of controls around those services that are not as common. Or if you think that you want to be focused on a certain architecture and make sure that traffic is not going from one area of your network to another, that's probably something you would need to add as a customized level of checks for your posture management practices. So customization is very important here to make sure that not only that you select the right frameworks for the regulatory reasons, but you're actually securing all the right things that have sensitive data, that are compute power that is expensive, and all of those windows that allow access to your environment, make sure that they are closed. Now, I love CIS benchmarks, and I think I kind of brought this slide just to help companies to, that a lot of them come to me and ask me which framework I should choose. I don't know, should I start with NIST? Should I start with PCI? Usually I would definitely recommend starting with CIS benchmark just because they have such a great framework for knowledge sharing. Those benchmarks are created by the top industry professionals, and they actually doing a pretty good job at defining the foundational piece of security of the environment. So starting with CIS benchmarks for cloud environments, they now have AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. They just added Oracle Cloud. They also have benchmarks for specific for Kubernetes and JKE. So starting with those would definitely be a really good start, and then you can map the rest of the requirements later on once you fix all of the issues. And just a sneak peek on how Google is providing the insights into the Kubernetes assessment. They're giving you a bunch of alerts here, and that is how the reactive CSPM starts. You start looking what is being misconfigured, and benchmarks give you specific recommendations on how to remediate issues. So basically, usually company would start by just running all of those reports and starting to create tickets to fix misconfiguration. So this is a very reactive process, a little bit painful because it will create a lot of findings in the beginning. But if you're going to do it on an ongoing basis, it will pay off. So what I've seen after companies are starting to run those, they selected the framework, they added their custom rules, they added their definitions of what is good, what is normal. They would start running reports, remediate manually all of the issues. Sometimes they use CLIs to run it a little bit more streamlined through their kind of dev people. And there are tools that help companies to remediate through automation. And I call it just a response. And because we are still responsive, even though you can, start implementing some of the automations, it would still be after the fact. So if, for example, we ran the assessment, the evaluation of posture on the cloud environment, the different response types can be if you find an issue with multi-factor authentication, or if you find some misconfigured Lambda functions, let's tag it. That would be the first level of response that can be automated. So you kind of use native APIs and start adding those tags to kind of notify or highlight that something is being misconfigured. You can send notifications to emails or to PagerDuty to Slack with set of manual instructions, or automatically create those Jira tickets. So this is the first level of automation here. Shutting down stuff. If there is something very bad that you've identified, such as public instance in the environment where you know for a fact that it shouldn't be, you would be able to kind of start using tools that are, as we mentioned, open source, or tools in the native cloud providers, or third-party tools to stop instances, to remove permissions immediately, or trigger a flow. There are SOAR tools that provide playbooks which can be triggered by the assessment of the posture management and triggering the flow for tagging the resource, creating a ticket, making changes, and defining that flow would be this in this stage of the maturity.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Feels as much as a risk decision than a maturity one as well, right? Like you could choose from any of these solutions depending on
how invasive you want it to be.
Comfortable. Yes.
Yeah, it really depends on the risk appetite of the company and how careful they are with making changes. There are a lot of security teams that would be very careful. They would only go as far as tagging and notifications. They wouldn't do anything like shutting down things or triggering flows. But there are companies that decide that they want to be more strict, and for things like public buckets, they have zero tolerance. So, and it can be applied on a different levels of invasiveness for different types of services or different pieces of your environment. So just a few examples on how to do it. We can trigger response through the Azure Security Center. This is an example to trigger logic app in case of MFA that was not enabled. So manual remediation. This is an example of the steps that would be needed to enable it, or you can trigger a logic app that would trigger that remediation for you. Auto remediation can be done using custom build or third-party open source tools. This is an example. So, for example, if we detected misconfiguration, we can send a notification to an SNS topic that will trigger a Lambda function, which is going to be making the remediation changes. And then the response would be sent to SNS topic with the fact that the issue was fixed or not, emails or other systems that are in use in your environment. So there are a lot of flexibility here, but it does require an effort from an organization to map everything that they want to auto-remediate and be very careful in implementation, because it's going to be pretty invasive here. And another new tool that AWS just released, kind of similar idea of playbooks. They have a template that deploys this architecture that takes findings from Security Hub through the CloudWatch events rule, and then the Lambda function will be doing the remediation through playbooks. So definitely worth checking if in case you are using Security Hub to generate findings. Moving on, proactive stage. We are aligned with CSPM and governance across all of the environments. We kind of know what's the framework, what the controls are in place. We are automating the remediation cycle where possible. A security assessment is mostly automated and is done pre-deployment. We're going to see that. This is pretty cool. We are prioritizing risks based on automation. So some automated way to say, here is what you need to fix first. based on machine learning, based on some scoring mechanisms, based on the risks, and we are measuring our benefits of the posture management. Governance kind of across all environments, it's not only generating findings and fixing them, it's also enabling these proactive measures such as landing zones in security center on AWS through the control tower, creating this landing zone that tells you what is right, how you need to deploy your account, with what are the guardrails that you need to have in terms of IAM, in terms of network connections, in terms of all the security toolsets that needs to be deployed. Here, for example, you may be able to deploy all of those third-party tools automatically for each account to make sure that it is being created with the right set of security in mind. Another governance example is make sure that all of your public buckets will be closed immediately. Nikki was saying maybe not. Maybe it needs to be customized to your environment. But if this account is, your PII, and you absolutely know that nothing needs to be public there, maybe that's a good governance kind of a measure to have in place. Blocking certain regions, if you know that you are under GDPR regulatory requirements, you may want to block everything but Europe. Make sure that the sensitive access is protected. Make sure that those very sensitive actions are only given to a short period of time or only given to people that absolutely needs to have them. Same for network access. Only open those ports that open your production environment for a short period of time for deployment and then close them back. So how do we take this security and shifting it left? How do we start pre-deployment? And that's where a lot of companies are using Terraforms and other types of templates for their for deployment of their environments. And the more we progress in our kind of types of workloads, the more we use those new ways of deploying infrastructure, this infrastructure as a code trend. So basically, when we are having this type of deployments through the templates, it's actually a really good place for security people to step in and say, hey, let me review this Terraforms or templates pre-deployment. I want to make sure that those golden standards are passing the security before you're deploying it and making sure that those are aligned with all the requirements that we have for posture management. So basically, just for example, if we have in my Terraform, if I have this construct of app service, I may want to review this specific template that I would be using for deployment of it. So maybe my security team needs to be reviewing it, making sure that all of those true, false, or all of those kinds of constructs are aligned with regulatory requirements. So I just wanted to show you, and I promise not to do a lot of demos here, but I just wanted to show you what it means because it's just much easier to explain with a quick demo. So Terraform assessment is what we can kind of use as an example of CSPM automation. So I do have a rule set that looks at the CIS benchmarks, and I can, those are AWS and Azure rules from the CIS that are mapped to all of these requirements of the CIS benchmarks with all of the descriptions and the remediation steps. So basically what we can do is take one of the Terraforms, I uploaded it prior to this demo, and run this evaluation on my template. And this would give me a list of all of those constructs that are not passing my regulatory requirements for CIS benchmarks. And then what I can do is I can actually see that, for example, here, the key rotation was not enabled. So basically my template failed this assessment, meaning that I need to go back to my developer and say, hey, dude, let's fix it, let's make it true, make sure that all of the next deployments are using this updated template. And then security is really part of this deployment cycle. So we do have one last stage, optimize, and we have 5 minutes left. Do we have any questions before that?
So far, the audience has been really quiet, but there's people that have been watching the entire thing. So I know they're listening because they're all there, but no one has asked any questions, which for the DevSlop show is pretty quiet.
I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign.
I know. I know.
I just wanted to ask about the GSL builder that I saw. So that I guess are the rule set that you use to, what is a GSL builder?
Yeah, so GSL builder is pretty cool language that allows me to ask any question about any service across all those cloud environments. And it basically gives you a human readable language to evaluate security. So you can say, Lambda should have tag. You didn't need to write Python scripts. You didn't need to know a lot about Lambda. You just needed to do 3 clicks, and you can run this check on all of your Lambda functions and get results immediately. So basically, this language is gives you the abstraction that you need to run very complicated security queries with a very simple language.
And that works across all environments. So if you were like, I want to know buckets, does it know that a bucket is a blob in Azure?
So you see we have this storage here. Where is my storage account? And then you can type, you can select the type where type equal is blob. And then you are doing it on the blobs. So it does have some nuances based on the platform, but it comes with a set of predefined rules, and all the rules are giving you a sense of how to write it, and also there is a pretty good documentation how to use it.
Okay, so is it pretty much having to learn another language? Simple, but still.
Yeah, it's kind of it's between language and scripting. It's somewhere less complicated than scripting.
Yeah. Human readable.
Yeah.
Human readable. It's a SQL simplified thing.
Yeah.
You don't really need to do joins or things like sorting. Right. You just do it with a few clicks, and it gives you an idea of what to select.
Perfect. And are there templates of things that already exist, so you don't have to create your own?
You can just Google use gsl.domain.com, and it gives you a very good repo of all of those checks with the language, the remediation steps, and we created that to make sure that we educate the world about how to do cloud security and posture management across different platforms.
Okay. Sorry if you've mentioned that before, but so I see tabs for different cloud vendor. The language is good for all of them. So would I have to write a bit like Terraform, like even if it works for all cloud vendor, I still have to write code for each of my cloud vendor? Is it the same with GSL?
Yeah, you kind of need to write query for all of them.
Okay.
The beauty of it is that it comes with over 2,000 rules. So chances that there is a rule that you want to write that is not there are very low.
Fair enough. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so last kind of a sneak peek into what optimize. What the utopia look like? Where are all of us going? And I have seen very few companies who actually are at this stage. And so basically, there is a strategical kind of alignment between all of the development teams and security and management and they strive to optimize the CSPM and make it very efficient across all of the environments. There is a full automation of remediation cycle. No one needs to go and fix things manually. It's all done through automation, scripting, or tool sets that the company has established. Security is baked into the cloud deployments, either through scanning of templates or through my kind of next quick demo that I have here for you that I will show you as the last slide. There is a full prioritization and it's automated, and we knowing where we are at any moment. We are measuring and improving year over year. So let's see how this looks like in a very mature company. Basically, I'm going to show you some sneak peek into the future, because this still does not, it's like a POC that we are running right now, to show how developer that is writing this Terraform or editing the Terraform can do the security as he writes their own template. So let's see. Basically, this is my virtual studio with all the templates, and I want to kind of select this template and evaluate the security of it. So I'm going to do the Terraform scan immediately through the plugin that I have here. I will select the framework that I'm interested in running, and I'm running it here. We can see that the output is going to be that it succeeded, meaning that I had no issues, and this Terraform is good to go. Now let's take another template here and run the same scan on the other Terraform with the same plugin. So scan failed, and what it shows me here is that I'm having some issue with my ingress in the security group that I was using in the template. And it gives me an idea of where the problem is by highlighting this template and highlighting the exact place with the finding that it found. So basically, I have the resource, and it tells me that my security group needs to be fixed. So now I'm going to fix it just by changing the CIDR block and run my Terraform scan again. Just to see if it's going to pass. And let's see, it's going to be successful. And now I can progress in my deployment lifecycle. So that is what it means to bake it into your development practices. Not a lot of tools still exist there, but we are getting there. So now, this is our maturity model. Hopefully, it will become more formal with someone who would want to adopt that. And I'm ready for any questions.
So we don't have a question in the chat, but someone was saying, "Ooh, it's good." And so positive comments are nice to you.
It is.
Yeah, I think that, like your work in developing this maturity model makes a lot of sense. It's really great because it gives you a way to talk about things that are otherwise sort of hard to properly articulate. So
yeah, and assess where you are and where you want to go, right?
Yes.
Like sometimes you're not going there. Yeah, plan. No, yeah.
I would love to have lots of people at the end of your presentation instead of only at the beginning.
We are getting there.
Yeah, totally. It's new. Cloud is new.
It is.
Awesome.
Well, securing it's new.
Newer.
Sorry. Please continue, Nancy.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, I just wanted to thank Marina for her presentation. Thank you so much for introducing us to. I feel like we had a premiere of your.
You did.
Of your CSPM maturity model and security model. Maturity model, and I hope to see it grow, just like Nicole just said, and that we see it progress and hear more about it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we can wrap up. I'll just go around table. Maybe Nicole, do you have any last words or anything you're looking forward to?
No, I'm looking forward to playing with my new music toy that I just bought, which is way off topic. So
this is good. Good to have hobbies other than DevSlop and security.
But no, this is great. Thank you, Marina. I really, really, really appreciated this. This was great.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Awesome.
It's great.
Cool.
Well, if we don't have anything else, all I have to say, unless Tanya, you wanted to.
I will just ask everyone to buy my book. It's called Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. I was gonna ask every person, I meet people at a party. I'm like, hey, what's up? Did you know I have a book?
Yeah, and you have. Didn't you give yourself a challenge to beat the record of 300 books on Amazon?
Yeah,
I pre-ordered it. It's on Amazon. I pre-ordered it.
I'm over 100 now. Basically, my publisher told me that the next most, the person that sold the most ever in their pre-launch sales was 300 books. I'm like, I can beat that. But then now I have to actually do it. So I'm very
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you. I did it.
So just before we wrap up, I just want to tell you a bit about what we have planned for the show. Next week, October 4th, we have a workshop. I'll put that on the screen. So it's, again, with Bridge Crew with their new tool called IAM. It's open source. So we've discussed a bit about that, about IAM, AWS IAM, how it can be complicated, and see another tool that is trying to help us make it more simple in managing it and auditing it and codifying it. So that's next week. And the week after, on October 11th, we have Farah Awa talking to us about hacking JSON Web Token for beginners. So that should be exciting. So that's what we have for the next few weeks. So again, don't forget to follow us and to subscribe to the channel, and follow us on all the other social media platforms to know what's coming up. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.